3. This is a listing under changes from one permitted non-residential use to another. Oh, never mind. I misread it.
Yeah, it's
It's
kind of a negative.
It is, yeah, yeah,
If you have to read it carefully to say, this doesn't count except when.
right. Yeah, I get it. Sorry.
The comments in yellow were the last set that Tara had issued, and we had discussed that. And because there were no changes determined, then the final draft just remained. One of the major things it does is it adds a lot of information in regard to a minor site plan review.
Are checklists still used as part of this regulation?
They're not eliminated.
Okay, are they in the I mean, there's just some confusion in our computer files about which checklists we're supposed to use and how to determine whether it's a minor site plan review needs all of the information. Is it clear on the checklist for staff? I'm just thinking about if Nick has to talk to someone at the counter, what do we use for the checklists and how does that work?
I guess we would have to go through that after.
Okay.
'Cause I don't think the checklist is really a formal part of the regulation.
And
I
that's,
think it was an addition to it.
okay, and that's fine, but it's just, I think it's very helpful if we have something we can just go through, or somebody from the board can come in and sit down with someone if that's the way you want to do it. But it just makes it very difficult for staff
Mhm.
when they're asked the question, do I need site plan review? How do we answer that question?
Well, that is answered pretty thoroughly, I think, in the regulation change itself. That was one of the purposes we had to determine when it was required, and that's what that new section is all about.
Okay, all right,
So I think that if whomever it is that has to make the decision reviews that one section,
okay.
it's pretty clear. Now, if you want to develop a checklist that
For an application.
for that,
Mhm,
we could do that.
okay. But you see doing that outside of the regulation adoption? And just having it as a
Yes, because
separate thing?
Yeah, it
Yeah.
might vary.
Okay, all right. Well, you and I can talk about it if you adopt these new ones, and we'll
Right.
figure out
Then we
how
can
to.
go through and update the
all right.
checklist.
Yeah.
Are we in a specific section, or do you want to just take general comments?
I would just take general comments. We can go through the whole thing if you like.
No, on the section where it says where site plan review is required,
Yes.
on the section 3D, additions or reconfigured building footprint height or depth are exempted. What does that mean?
No, they're not exempted. That's what I was looking at before. It's a double negative.
You have to read, yeah,
They're
this,
exempted except when it has.
read 3 says
Oh,
changes
yeah,
from the
okay.
permitted residential use of another will be required, permitted except for the following. And then it lists the things that,
Those things are not exempt.
They're not exempt.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's confusing. Then, yeah.
Well, I'm in with
Yeah.
this, but
I think you could interpret it by saying, if you do any of these things listed 1 through, or A through
I-
whatever, if you do any of those things,
Yeah.
You're not exempt.
Yeah.
Here's the problem. The problem is under section A, it reads development activities that are exempt from the site plan review. And we shouldn't have a double negative there.
Yeah,
I'm
I agree
afraid
with
that
that.
some future planning board will get confused, and use that, and misinterpret that. So if there was a way to reword that, I would think they should try to do it. Also, do we need a statement that says if you're not changing the envelope of the building, you're exempt from site plan review? Now, that's always been the case. If all you're doing is remodeling a kitchen inside of an existing footprint, you don't need site plan review to do that. You need a building permit, but you don't need site plan review.
But
Do we
I think
need a
that's what-
statement that
I
says
think
that?
that's what 3 says. Changes from one permitted non-residential use to another, or from a non-residential use allowed by a special exception to a permitted use, provided the change does not involve, and then it lists all these. So what you're saying is handled right there, if you're not making a change, Mark.
So the question I have, it happens in Town Square all the time. So Town Square was permitted for several businesses, right? And the calculation of parking spaces and access and everything else was set at that time.
Right.
Those businesses don't look anything today like they did when they were permitted. So you have had substantial changes of use, commercial changes of use, did not affect the building footprint. However, parking is totally different and access is
Okay, but this
totally
is what I'm
different.
saying.
Right,
This says you don't have to come in and get a site plan review if that's the case, except if, and
yeah,
then it lists a whole bunch of stuff. The first thing is increase in the number of dwelling units, okay? Or the increase in pedestrian and vehicular traffic, a change in the required parking. If any of those occur, then yes, you do have to come in. It's not exempt.
okay, so we need to communicate that to the resort. Because they should not be changing anything in Town Square until they have a letter from the town, either saying that it's exempt or they have submitted a site plan review application, because they have not ever done that in 17 years I've been here.
Well,
I
that's
mean-
fine. I don't know if the planning board has any authority to do that.
Well, if you adopt those regulations, then we need to communicate the change in the regulation and tell them they need to come in from now on.
In other words, changing from, say, a clothing store to a restaurant.
It, absolutely, that has
A big
totally
impact on-
different pedestrian
Right.
traffic and it has different parking
And that's happened
requirements.
without any.
And that's happened several times over.
Well, I
Yeah.
think that was one of the reasons we did it.
Right, exactly, but I'm just saying it's gonna be totally different for you guys. You're gonna see a lot more in site plan
Right.
review applications than you have in the past. Because it goes on all, right?
No, guilty as charged.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right, no,
Yeah.
that's right, you're an example. Yeah.
Oh, you mean like the bookstore or cafe?
Yeah, no, but that did not go through site plan review, but if you look at the wording now, it's gonna be
Now it's gonna be
required.
required. so
That's
we should-
right.
We should notice that
We-
whatever the proper term is.
We absolutely need
Commercial
to,
property owners.
yeah,
Okay, so if the resort changes a skateboard facility to a bicycle facility,
yes, we're talking to them about that. That was brought up yesterday.
We can come on to that. Maybe we should just,
Yeah, don't go there yet.
no go there yet.
That's what we're doing. Okay.
Well, actually, it's germane to your
Oh.
conversation that you're having, because that's
Yeah.
exactly what's happening, is we have a change of
Construction is
use.
starting, yeah.
no discussion.
And there was no discussion, no site plan review, nothing was done. No
So
application
what's
was
gonna,
made.
what's
Yeah.
gonna change?
We don't know yet.
We don't know yet. Chris is looking into it.
Okay, Bill has suggested changing the.
No,
configurations to-
I think that statement you just read, as far as I'm concerned, exactly. My question was, And it was a question, I didn't suggest changing it, is do we need a statement that says if you're not changing the envelope? Now, what I'm hearing a lot of arguments is, yeah, but if it changes the parking, my concern is that we don't do anything about it when they come up anyway.
Mhm.
So it's largely, I mean, here is a case, we know that there's inadequate parking, and we just approved it. We know that there's inadequate parking.
Right.
In the winter, he's admitted that it's inadequate parking, but we don't do anything. So why bother?
Well,
But that request is not changing that problem. It's not increasing it or
Yeah.
Well, yeah,
I-
but
I don't
anybody's
see-
gonna make that, you know, he's gonna make that kind of argument, you know? Yeah, it's not gonna make it any worse than it was, so therefore approve it.
well, that's just not sure that anything making happen golf course
Because it's going to increase-
No, it goes back to the age-old problem that we don't have an ability to correct parking when it's laid out wrong. There's no ability to do anything about it. And that's the problem. It's not these little things.
I think you've identified
Well-
a really important point.
Yes.
Right,
Yeah.
Parking is a major issue, I agree.
right.
But this particular proposal to do a 20 by 20,
Well,
No, right.
I
and
wouldn't
I don't
say,
disagree
I
with
wouldn't
that.
say to Larson, if he were still here, that this proposal you're making is inadequately proposed because you've got this parking problem.
well, I would say irrespective of that, I think there is
There's
a
a general parking
Parking
problem that we
I
don't
think we
face
all
into.
agree on
It's
that.
a great,
I think we
it's a
agree
big
on that.
don't we already have guidance from the pedestrian study as to
Oh, yes, build a parking
So
garage.
They built it, they wanted a multi-level parking garage, right?
well, and on-street parking?
And any future
I'm sorry.
lodges have underground.
Right.
Yeah, there are definitely
So-
suggestions.
Mark, you had a,
No, I think that Craig was right on that the new owners, the selectmen should have a workshop meeting and maybe have a joint selectmen planning board workshop meeting, not to make any final decisions, but to at least get the conversation going with the new owners. And I think that that's critical as soon as that closing occurs to ask them to come in. Because the conversations that I've had with them, they are receptive to knowing what the issues are for the community. And especially have the conversation before they come in with any major project, which I think you ought to put on your radar scope that it's, if the closing happens, it's not gonna be long before they're in here with something major.
like an aerial tramway.
Like an aerial tramway, like a major or two new buildings, you know, things that will have really big impacts on the downtown area. And it's better to have this conversation before that gets submitted, because your hands are tied after that.
So who makes that happen? Is that something?
So I think the selectmen should reach out and send a letter, but that's up to the board.
When is Tara starting her work for this?
Next month, I
Yeah,
think.
next month. She's already in the process of doing some
Mhm.
rough drafts and so forth to present to us next month.
And parking is on her list.
Yes. So this is on-street parking, I think is specific, but
Yeah.
we can expand it.
Does anyone know whether the parking lots that were, the parking lots that we're talking about, are they part of this proposed land purchase?
Yes, they are.
So if that land purchase deal goes through, if that closes,
Yeah.
then all the parking lots that we're talking about would be owned by the resort.
That's correct.
Just a question while we're waiting. So like, I know the parking lots like Black Bear Inn, that's all owned by the resort, right?
Yes.
Every one of
They're
those
all-
parking lots
Every one of
included,
those is
including the
currently
rink.
owned. No, it's currently owned by the Waterville Company.
Right.
And each of the businesses around there, including the Black Bear, have easements, a number of parking spots that they can have on that land.
Okay.
Okay, any more comments on the updated site plan review regulations?
So how is this double negative phrase going to change? Did we talk?
I'm not in favor of changing it, but, you know,
We just leave it the way it is now?
I think if, I will agree, when you first go through it and quickly read it, it's a little bit confusing, but if you concentrate on it and read down through, it's not a bad, it lists it pretty clearly, and I think it, in some ways, it's a good idea to list it that way, because you're actually looking at what it is that requires it, as you read down through A through P. You've made the general statement that if you're not gonna make any of these changes, and all you're gonna do is make a change in the use, you don't have to come to the board. But if it involves any of these things, you've gotta come.
And we could look at maybe capitalizing.
I was gonna say capitalize that
does not
one.
involve,
One phrase,
right.
that would be a good way to highlight it.
Um,
Provided the change use does not involve any of the following. If you
Yeah.
capitalize that phrase, it would stand out.
The only one that I'm looking down this list of things that would require you to come in for site plan review. Item G, the addition or relocated freestanding signs. We have a sign permit regulation. They're supposed to come in for a sign permit. So why would this trigger site plan review? Wouldn't you just have to get a site permit? You just have to get a site permit, sign permit. I would think.
Well, maybe
Where does
not,
that
because
sign
if you look at the purpose, there's three basic items that, the site review should be looking for: protection of public safety, preservation of natural features,
Right.
and the ensuring the finished product will have a pleasing visual effect. That is, in other words, if someone was coming in or was providing or asking for a large sign to be out in front of the building somewhere, it would have a visual effect. And if the planning board is supposed to review these changes for visual effect,
Well, I think the selectmen are supposed to be reviewing them.
Right, would they apply for a
Make
sign
sure
permit,
that
not a site
if they
plan?
apply for a sign permit, they're supposed to ensure that it's meeting the zoning.
but whereas the sign would have a visual effect, does that also require review?
Well, I don't know. It just seems to me to be,
Yeah, no, I
we
agree.
have two competing regulations.
Yeah, and we wouldn't want a business to have to apply for
Both.
both, right?
I mean,
Right.
do they actually compete in substance?
No.
Not, it's just that,
Well,
it's
we're
redundant.
both gonna go to the
Redundant.
zoning documents
We're
and
saying-
take a look at what our sign regulations read and
Right.
say, does the sign conform to the zoning? And if it does, it's approved. If it doesn't, it's not approved. I mean, the sign regulations are what they are.
right,
And this is even more specific because it's for relocating or expanding, right, Bill?
It says additional or
Additional or
relocated
relocated.
freestanding signs.
Right, so now you have two different situations. If they're just fixing it up, then they have to come in for the sign permit to the selectmen.
Mhm.
And then if they want to move it,
or
they have,
expand.
or add another one.
Right.
They have to come into you for site plan review. I just think that they're, like Bill said, they're very competing. And confusing for the user.
Right.
I
Well,
would,
this is new language, so we can decide not to have it in,
well, I would try it without it.
right.
I would strike it from this
Right.
change.
That's-
and leave it in the sign permit and then, or sign permit application process. And then if you see a problem with signs following, because we just changed the sign regulations substantially a couple of years ago, right? So
Yes.
if we're seeing problems with signs, then go back to this.
Okay,
And I don't know how Tara will feel about that, but I
don't
think it
she-
competes.
I don't think she
I think it
really
competes.
thinks one way or the other. She has been in yellow here. Please look at these things
Yeah.
and see if something you want
Yeah.
to add or subtract, so.
Okay.
Sharon or Rick, you had the ability to, you got this down pat where you can get it, information so that we can make this correction in the final draft.
Yes, well, I would send this back to Tara.
Yep.
Or
Or
we,
does she have?
I
the-
think she had I think this
Yeah,
is
we'll
just
tell her to
the,
strike this
a
paragraph.
PDF. I don't think I
Somebody's
have the
gotta
word
tell us
file
so
of
we
that.
can get it accurate. So
Yeah.
it's that new section and it's 3G.
Yeah,
It's 3G.
so just strike.
Strike that, but
Strike.
also I think we wanted to capitalize that one
Okay.
phrase
Capitalize.
that provided that change and use does not involve any of the following.
Yeah, it's again, it's number, section, it's a
Yeah,
section
section.
83,
Right.
the third line, the whole third line, really.
the whole third line.
It is a minor point, but under minor site plan review, she said, talks about the addition of freestanding solar panels or satellite dishes.
We can't,
Satellite
We
dishes.
we can't.
regulate satellite dishes. Now, I don't have a problem with the statement, but you can't turn down somebody because they want to put a satellite dish in.
That may not be, but you may want to review it, as to location or something like
Okay.
that, maybe suggest.
Well. I'm gonna notify all.
I'm okay with it the way it
Yeah,
is.
I think we notify them, and then if we get pushback, we deal with it. I'd like to know, I think they go up far too often, and we're totally clueless until someone calls us and complains.
Mm.
You know, I'm kind of like with Bill, just at least you can make suggestions. Please don't put it here. What about over here?
And we have a pretty clear mode for disseminating all this information.
Yeah,
Or
we
the how.
have the condo.
appropriate thing.
Sharon has a good list of condo presidents or board members and contacts, so yeah, I think we can.
For the satellite dishes, and for the commercial businesses regarding the existence of new site plan
Yes,
requirements.
yeah.
We'll be able to punch
Yeah,
all that
we're
out
gonna be able to get it out.
and then see if anyone converts a clothing store to a restaurant,
Yep,
Mhm.
or if they notice ahead of.
well, yeah, we're gonna, again, I think it's part of that workshop, the big workshop with the new owners and talk through, because they're gonna be the ones you have to worry about. It's just a
So
different,
again, this is a question, but under section 4A, we talk about for an application for minor site plan review. The notice of the public hearing may be included in the same notice as the notice of submission, which is what we did today on a regular site plan review. Is this suggesting that a regular site plan review, you could no longer do that?
I don't think so. I think it allows you the flexibility in either case. I mean, we've been doing it all along. It's very seldom that we do it any differently than that. And actually, probably the application today would have been, under the new regulations, probably been considered a minor site plan review.
Well, then I would get rid of that, the notice of the public hearing may be included in the same notice of submission under a minor site plan, because it implies a right that's, to me, as I read it, that would be applied only to a minor site plan review. And if we're saying that in any site plan review, we could hold the public hearing the same day as we accept the application, then I agree with Terry, that's what we've done all along. So I don't know why we would need to say it.
Well, would you want to do that, Bill? Would, for something like use the tramway, something that's substantial, huge, that's going to impact everybody, wouldn't you want that to come in and accept it as complete and then have a whole separate process for the public hearing?
Absolutely.
With public notice.
But that's the planning board's choice. And what Terry's saying, and I kind of agree with him, in many cases, even though it's not a minor site plan, it's not a minor site plan, we'd like the flexibility of being able to.
Oh, okay. All right.
Maybe,
To be able to hold the meeting on the same day as you accept the application.
Okay,
I'm okay with that. It doesn't say you have to,
okay.
maybe the thing to do is to shift that statement
up
from
to the top.
up to the top, so that
Right.
it applies to everything.
Yeah, so that it applies to all.
Okay.
Anybody?
And that
object to
says may be included in the same notice, right, as the notice of submission.
So maybe at the top,
I,
take out
I
one.
have
Yeah.
Adobe
Well,
Acrobat.
I don't know whether the rest is,
You
I
can
think
go
that whole
in
statement has to
to
be
her PDF on
yeah,
my
I
machine
think so.
and put in the comments as edits. All right, and we'll go with that. And then we'll send it back to her and she can.
And she can,
Yeah, so, I think that if you just struck.
So, and I would say it's maybe included at the discretion of the planning board chairman, right? Yeah, because you gotta make that decision,
Right before,
it's not the board.
Yeah,
Okay, so
because he's got to make that decision when the application.
Right, when the application comes in.
So strike for an application for a minor site plan, and instead substitute at the discretion of the planning board chairman.
Right.
The notice of the public hearing will be included in the same notice as the notice of the submission. The language conveying that the public hearing will be held as noticed if the submission is accepted complete by the board.
Yeah.
So you just tag it on, instead of making it a separate paragraph, it would just be a continuation. of-
Well, it's, yeah, right, it's just a continuation of what it is, right?
So are we duplicating that under C? Public hearing, no minor site plan, maybe held at the same meeting with permission provided. that it was
Sounds to me like it is, yeah.
accepted. Do we need that?
So just strike it. Alright.
Strike this plan.
The,
Strike the one under A.
No,
yes,
I noticed
which
that
one? You,
she's reduced the time frame from 90 days down to 65 days.
I think that was state law.
state law.
Is that state?
yeah,
law?
there,
Okay.
yeah. I think she gave you I think the state law might say 60, but she put 65 because of the way your meetings happen, being the set day of the month. So I think 65 days covers 2 meetings.
I guess under A is talking about the notice of both of them, whereas under C, it's just talking about the public hearing itself,
So you want to leave C in?
right? Am I reading that correctly?
Which part are you reading and seeing now?
Well, under, see the new bit under
For
public hearing,
minor
for
sub-
minor site plan applications and public hearing to be held. So that's addressing the public hearing, whereas the one under A is addressing the submission, the notice. of the-
Right,
So
So
they are.
I believe it,
Yes.
you know.
All right. never mind.
Yeah, and so under C, what I would get rid of is the bottom paragraph that's in blue.
Well, that's what we were just talking about.
Right, I'd get rid of that,
But
because
isn't
it,
that
you know,
talking-
again implies that it's only applicable to minor site plan applications. It's, you know, but I don't have any problem as long as we strike out minor.
Or as you say, a public hearing may be held.
So just take
Right.
the minor.
At the discretion of the
Mhm.
planning
Yeah.
chairman.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, that's the same statement.
Did you get that, Sharon, Rich? Yes.
matter of curiosity, how much of these specifications for building, street, parking, is in the subdivision plan regulation? Does it sound very similar to what you were reading earlier?
I'm not sure what we made that change. Let's look at it. What in particular, what section are you talking about? Bill?
I'm reading 5, starting with, well, each of these sections, A, B, C, but by the time I got to C, D, E, it started to sound like what I was reading in
The zoning ordinance or the?
the
Subdivision,
subdivision.
Yeah,
subdivision regulations.
I could find it in the subdivision regulation. You're talking about D, streets and parking. Right?
Yes, and then as it goes on, there's special flood hazards. And then it says, in particular, the planning board shall require that all subdivision proposals greater than 50 lots or 5 acres, whichever is less, et cetera, et cetera. I don't mind that it's here.
Yeah.
It just sounded very similar to the requirements for subdivision regulation.
In that, in particular where?
Page 8,
Eight.
second.
Section F, after F1, 2, correct, on page 8, number 2. And as it continues, in other words, do you list, Mark, are these?
Yeah,
the
no,
same?
I'm looking on page 8 of the, just as an example, page
Yes.
8 of the subdivision regulations has a special flood hazard section.
Yep.
That's similar to what's there. And I'm like you, I don't care that they're in both places, but we just should be aware that they are.
I think there's a statement in the front that it's, in
That
fact,
they're,
says that.
that they're
the two
parallel.
tend to parallel each other.
Yeah.
And that,
Yes, I remember.
you know, one is a copy of the other is what it's really saying.
And that just brings up a point that I just thought of. We have a subdivider improvement agreement. So that the developer, once he gets a subdivision approved by you, he signs that with the town manager. They co-sign an agreement about bonding and following through and completing the project, sets time limits and those sorts of things. We don't have anything like that for site plan. And sometimes a site development can be as disruptive as a subdivision. And so we don't have any mechanism other than a building permit to ensure that a project is done. And can you have that conversation with Tara to see if that's the way it is in other towns?
But under
And just-
section 7, it's in here, isn't that what it's saying, may require a performance bond or satisfactory substitute before any work commences on a development?
Yeah, yes, the bond is the same, but the subdivider improvement agreement goes beyond that and talks about tying in with public facilities and those sorts of things, and making sure that roads are constructed and inspection
Right,
schedules and all that. And all I'm saying is, we don't have anything like that for site plan review. And I don't know if that's typical of other towns, or, and you just count on the bond covering all that, or if we should have a site plan improvement agreement.
Well, it's part of the site plan review regulations, that statement, so why wouldn't it apply if the planning board gives us the right to require a performance bond?
Well, no, I'm saying the performance bond is in there, that's fine, but it's only one aspect of the
Oh.
subdivider improvement agreement. And I'm just asking if there's a
If the
way
whole
to
statement should
do
be
it for site plan and not just subdivision. And if that's your purview, or if that has to go to town meeting for approval.
Well, I don't think we want it to go to town meeting.
No, I don't. I absolutely don't, but I just want to make sure that with Tara, that you guys have the ability to expand that subdivider improvement agreement to subdivision and site plan improvement agreement.
Yeah.
That's, I think, just changing the title of it and changing the references within it. If we can have that same agreement for site plans, it would be helpful to staff.
Okay,
All right, so
I think that's a good idea.
I'll mention it to Tara about a site plan improvement agreement.
Right, but right now it's called subdivider improvement agreement, and I would like it to be expanded to include site plan,
So subdivider and.
subdivider and site plan improvement agreement.
Okay, but are you asking her to do the agreement?
No,
No,
she doesn't,
reference.
we have an
Reference it
agreement,
in the-
but reference it in here and make sure that it's legal, that you guys can do that. Or if it takes some action of the selectmen or whatever it takes. And the reason that I say that is we're not gonna have many more subdivisions. We're gonna have big site improvements of existing subdivisions. So.
And under penalties, it implies that we have the right, that the selectmen, can enforce a fine. Do we have regulation, do we have written things?
State law allows the selectmen to do that.
Well, I understand, but do we have an ordinance that actually lists the fines?
No, the fine amounts are listed in state law.
They're
They're-
listed in
they're-
state law?
yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, any other comments? Do we need more time on
Now, if I were a developer, like, which comes first? Do I do a site plan review? Do I do a subdivision plan? What is the sequence of events that's supposed to take place?
that? Well, if there is a subdivision involved, that would be prior to the site plan review. So you do the subdivision and then the site plan.
Site plan then is the last approval that the developer needs before
But it may not,
construction.
No, a building permit then.
but it may not need a,
Well, certificate of occupancy.
Yeah.
But one doesn't automatically imply that the other is approved.
That's right.
We've run into that before.
This is, I'm
Yeah.
not, it's not really solid in my way of thinking of, if I'm a developer, what do I have to do? How many of these review approvals do I need before I bring the construction crew to the site?
You need an engineer.
You need the subdivision first because you can't determine the setbacks until you know the property boundary. So you can't build a building and then do a subdivision
if you wanted to sell.
if you wanted to subdivide.
You have to subdivide.
Which is exactly what Craig was talking about with the lot merger. He
Right,
was getting rid of those internal lines because it's all his property.
right.
And that way he doesn't have to worry about setbacks if he proposes another building.
It's just site plan review.
Just site plan review in that case.
Okay. Have we had adequate time to review this revised set of site plan review regulations? We need more time. We've made some changes. It is a public hearing. The changes we've made, I wonder if they're significant enough to require another public hearing.
I think it is clarification, don't you? And it doesn't change the meaning.
I don't think we've done anything that significantly curtails or expands. So I would say probably I consider them minor changes. It would not require another public hearing. So there being no more comments from the public, I'll make a motion that the planning board adopt the revised regulations as amended today as the new set of site plan regulations. Do we have a second? Any further discussion on that? Deliberation? Then I'll close the public hearing and bring it to a vote. I don't think this requires a roll call vote. All in favor? Say aye. Aye. Opposed? Nay? Okay. Unanimous. So these are the new adopted regulations, and we'll give the corrections through.
From
back to
Tara,
Tara.
Yep.
Have her give us the.
And they take effect immediately.
that's right.
Yes.
So we'll work on getting a corrected setback, by next week. So,
Okay, the next thing on the agenda is the updating of the master plan. And we were going to look at chapter 1 for today. I don't know, I think that Sharon got us copies out. And I had gone through it, I'll just give my comments first and I'll open it up. I read the whole chapter and I don't really have any issue with any of the wording, any of the things that were said. There's a little bit updating that might be required, such as the current planning board members and so forth. And I had one or two other minor things, but the main thing I saw was that it was listed as one chapter called the vision statement. And I think it actually was 2 chapters, where one would be the introduction, where you'd say this was, the plan was adopted, and this is what the plan is made up of, and this is what it's supposed to do, and so forth. And then you would have a second chapter, which I would think would be the vision statement. And I think just by shifting these paragraphs around, I did that. I think it makes a lot more sense, or it makes it easier to understand. It just seems like a little bit of a hodgepodge, like you jumped around. You go for a vision statement and you had to kind of search for what the vision was, because it talked about how it was adopted and all that. So I just want to briefly review what I had changes I had made. I know it's difficult if you don't have the copy of it, but just to kind of give you the idea, and if you think it's a legitimate thing to do, then we can explore a little bit further. But I made the first chapter the introduction, and the first part of it was about the master plan, and it lists the fact that the New Hampshire statute allows Waterville Valley to have a master plan, and the plan was adopted to provide vision for the future of the town and so forth. And then it goes down through the purpose of the master plan and the developing of the master plan. The master plan in its purest form is a series of reports. Goes on, and the master plan, however, is more than just a static document. It's a living document, so forth. And then in that introduction, I thought was, if you're going to introduce the Town of Waterville Valley Planning Board members, this would be the place to do it, not in the vision statement. And then the history of the Town of Waterville Valley can go in the introduction as well. And then at the end of the history, then you say, okay, this is the vision statement. That's chapter 2. And that's when it goes right into the town's most basic resources, its land, and the use of this resource determines to a very large extent the character and quality of the life of the community. The rate, location, and type of growth placed upon the various resources creates the appearance and efficiency of the town built in natural environment. A well-planned community establishes a system for determining which uses occur in what lands, and the community aesthetics are a reflection of that system. The master plan is the foundation for this planning system. And I think that's a good vision statement. And then it goes on to the general goal. Water Valley seeks to be self-contained residential four-season resort community with the extension of recreation, education, and so forth. And then, as dictated by the statute in the state, there are certain sections within the vision statement that you address, such as land use, economic factors, changing demographics, infrastructure, and so forth. So I suggest that we might just do some rearranging like that to help clarify.
So which paragraph, which existing paragraph becomes a vision statement?
Well, the vision statement is a vision section, actually.
So, okay,
Yeah,
but
but with-
I'm looking at 2161, the current number. Isn't where it says Waterville Valley seeks to be, isn't that the vision statement itself? Like the summary
That's
of
the goal. But
Okay,
that would be my second paragraph.
okay. Which the first paragraph?
The town's most basic resources is land, and the use of it, the use of these resources determines, well, it's 2154.
2154,
Yeah, I'm
okay.
sorry, I didn't understand. I would go 2154, 2157, and then 2161. That's the way I had it. Doesn't necessarily have to be that way. But you're right, the goal statement is actually a thing that says, this is where.
This is what we seek to do.
Exactly.
Okay. But I agree, you have like the summary is chapter 1,
Yeah,
like introduction, like you said, and then vision is chapter 2. Okay.
but I think all the wording is good, it's all
Yeah.
there.
Do we still have the current chapter 1 though, which isn't that,
The current chapter 1 is the vision statement, and it includes all
Okay.
that stuff.
okay, got it.
But it's very difficult.
So we're gonna break it into 2.
Yeah, break it
Okay.
into two, so when
All
we
right.
get to the vision statement,
Got
you know, this occurred because when Tom Meyer called, he said,
Yeah.
you know, could you tell me what the vision is for the
Yeah.
planning board? And I said, well, you look at the master plan, and I looked at it, I was searching all over.
Right.
trying to find it.
Yeah, what is chapter 1?
What is chapter 1?
Well, I'm looking for it,
So
and
it is right here in, so the 2, disregard the 2. Okay,
yeah,
we've done away with that.
all right,
Okay.
that's all the
So-
problem right there.
So chapter 1 is currently 2.1. It's just gonna be number 1,
Okay,
chapter 1.
that was my point.
This numbering system is all gonna go away. It was being used, but now it's not. So it's all gonna be changed to a regular paragraph numbering system.
Agreed.
Nick's gonna have so much fun with
Yeah.
it. He doesn't know how much fun he's gonna have. He needs to ask Holly Burbank, 'cause she tried. So anyway, we will fix that. But are you gonna give the edits to Nick so that
Yeah,
We
I
can
got them here, what I'll
get
do,
them broken
Nick,
down?
I'll just give them to you and
Yeah.
before I leave, and then you can, this isn't by any means a final thing that I'm suggesting, it's just that I think it would
Right.
get it to the point where we could.
Get it on paper and then
Yeah.
you guys can look at it, and if you wanna make other changes, we can.
Back to your first question, reading it, my general impression. My general impression of reading the master plan is it's just out of date. 20 years, these statements are 20 years old.
Mhm.
And many of them, I don't think are in fact where we are as a town at all. And at some point in time, I don't care about writing it, but we ought to come back and agree on at least some bullet points as to where we are and where we want to be,
Yes.
because some of it is just, it's just,
Too
well,
verbose.
it's too old.
I didn't find it to be old and outdated at all.
Well, let me give you an
So many
example.
words.
It says, all right, preserving your community. All right, and under there, it talks about the one that we want to maintain the physical environment. There's no question about that. But the question that becomes is, what does the town need to do to preserve that environment? Because just simply writing zoning isn't gonna preserve. It's not gonna prevent Nelson Woods from disappearing. And if our vision is that for the town, it's gotta, that there's certain key areas that have gotta be maintained, then we ought to say at some point down that the town ought to consider buying these properties or doing something with them.
Mhm.
Because it isn't gonna happen by just changing the zoning, because you can't prevent somebody, because we found out from cutting the woods down, right? Second, it goes on, then the second, it says the various groups in our town are expanding and growing. They're not growing, not in my opinion, they're declining.
No, but the population has increased from,
Well,
We need
so, yeah, but we need to fix it, I'm not sure.
I agree,
this
Wendy,
recommends-
that's exactly what Wendy said. We need some numbers, we need some statistics instead of all these words.
Absolutely.
well, yeah, but
And
this
we
is
need
just,
the word
this is
too.
the
this is just the vision statement, though. This isn't the specifics. I think you get into the
You're gonna-
specifics.
Yeah, you get into the specifics in,
Where are numbers in here?
Well,
I
they're
did
not
my
in the
head.
vision statement. They're-
There aren't hard, I don't see any charts or numbers or anything that substantiate, that any of these statements support.
The point is, this was a snapshot in time in 2010, I think, 2011, right? When
Well, it actually, I don't
Or even
think
earlier.
that this goes back,
They
this
just
vision
accepted
statement was
But it should
recopied
Right.
from the one that was written.
It should
Right.
support
2000.
numbers that are somewhere.
Right.
And there are, I don't see any numbers anywhere.
So really what you're arguing for is perhaps a committee to look at really reworking the vision statement in chapter 1.
I think the last time we did this, we did have to connect one for each section. And then
Yes.
Then all the sections were put together and the vision statement was written based on those. So and there were numbers involved. There's quite a bit of active detail with regard to
And-
housing and the.
And the
Population.
don't forget the Conservation Commission is redoing their whole chapter because they're doing the natural resource inventory. And that's gonna have a big impact and we have the wetlands piece that you now can look at. I mean, but that information's getting gated.
But just as an example, there is a paragraph in here that says that land is in high demand and increasing steadily in value.
Yeah, it's not
Yeah.
true. We're facing a reality of
That's cyclical.
declining property values.
Yeah, that's cyclical.
Well, actually, Bill, we added 4.1% to our valuation this month. DRA just
I would
notified.
contend the backlog of single-family homes in this valley is nothing but short of discouraging.
But that's not the
It
land.
decreased this past month. It went from 17 down to 13. I mean, you know,
But
it is
those are-
cyclical.
But this is a vision I don't know if you want to have,
Well, we could debate it, you know, we need
But
to
it's
debate
there.
it.
But I think Terry has a good point, that
Yes.
perhaps the
Yeah.
first chapter should be the last thing we do.
Yeah,
Because, you know, if we need to get into numbers and stuff, and so our other chapters, our second chapter. should
Will
be
drive
what we look
how
at,
we
and
end
the
up.
first chapter will be the last thing that we can look at what we've done and
Right.
summarize it.
Okay. There's several statements in here that claims the Waterville Valley is a four-season resort.
Yeah.
I put a big question mark beside that.
Yeah.
Well,
Just
Well,
three
it's-
certainly some
So
are
not
not.
if we're pushing
It-
height.
Now,
control.
fall
It desires to be.
Yes.
The question
Desires
is,
to
what's
be.
it, right?
The lodges are open year round, so.
I think the only months that fall short would be April, May.
Mud season.
Yeah, well, I
Well-
mean,
we gotta get the
Yeah,
money
but
in
even
here.
after April.
But the two things that struck me, were, no real reference to the study we spent a lot of money on for the future, for the
It hasn't
planning.
happened yet.
It hadn't happened in this, but maybe there needs to be some reference of that being a guiding document after you come up with the vision. And the second thing was, no real mention of, like hiking, more of the summer and fall thing. There's a strong emphasis as, this town became a ski town and it was developed that way. And I think we're trying to get back to perhaps, being more of a trail-oriented town as well.
Version
So those two things struck me as
That has no.
different
number.
than perhaps, as I saw it, as a snapshot
We'll
back
find that document
in the
and we
day.
will start numbering these
And older,
paragraphs.
because they just super copied.
For them
I
to
think
refer to
sections.
anything.
Why bother changes? I mean, no one reads it anyway. kind of
Line
thing.
numbers, I
So,
think.
Well, we ran out of time. I think it was, we ran out of time.
We don't
It requires that you
change
have
the
an master plan every 10 years minimum.
Yeah, I think the line
And I
numbers
think the window ran out.
line
might be the easiest way.
Way up the old one.
But
Right.
when they're done, we need to change
So
That was my memory.
the numbering and make sure that the
Could be wrong.
paragraphs are logical and all that. That's
a lot of it seems
huge
older than
issue
10
in
years.
Word.
It does, that's.
Yeah.
Because when we
Right.
went to,
And it's not what
This
sound like
form-
boilerplate language.
it took days
You see that, Wendy?
for her.
Sorry.
When you read it, does it sound like it's more than 10 years old to you?
Oh, yeah, parts of it for sure. I mean, parts are obviously added in more recently, parts are old.
But the question is do we pursue the other chapters first and then where we end up and go back? Or do we write the guiding document first that governs how we look at
Well,
the
it
other
depends-
chapter?
I guess it depends if chapter one is strictly gonna be a vision statement. Because some of these statements in here are not vision, they're summarizing the way Waterville Valley is today. Like this whole preserving our community, I just kind of wrote it to rip it all out. And technology infrastructure, a lot of these are summaries, it strikes me, maybe there's a different way to say it all.
Right.
I mean, it's frustrating to think that under technology infrastructure, we were saying 10 years ago, we shouldn't be lagging behind technology and not having fiber optic. And we're still here. So maybe there's a better way to say it, so we don't feel so dated.
I chuckled when I read that.
Some of those things, personally, I don't think that these references and summaries belong in a vision statement.
Right,
Of
well,
course not. And we also need to follow the state
State.
mandated.
But I think you'll find that in the state mandated, the way the state lists it, that's where you do put it in the
Okay.
vision
But
statement.
then I need to update.
If they call it vision, I'm not sure if they call it vision statement or vision chapter. But I was kind of amused by that too, because it didn't seem to me like a vision statement. That you would have all these little sections and facts, and it got too detailed as far as I was concerned. But I think it may be that they require a vision chapter, and I think that's probably why it's that way. I didn't bring the book this time, but the wording is in there. If you read it, you might.
But
Yeah.
the purpose of this document is a plan, is actually to provide a blueprint that both the planning board and the selectmen can follow in terms of determining priorities of where they ought to be working, right?
Yes.
So the comments about including like the stuff out of the study with is absolutely crucial. And if those are the things that we believe that the town ought to accomplish, they need to be in here.
But I don't think that they're necessarily in detail required to be in the vision chapter. At the
Oh,
vision
I don't-
chapter, then you.
I don't
get
care
into
where
the
they
detail.
are. I'm a big believer, just give me a single piece of paper
Yes.
that's got listed on it, these are the things we're going to do, you know?
But the vision,
I don't need a fancy written document.
no, but the vision chapter should reference that, what our guide,
Yes,
You know,
right.
the vision chapter would reference infrastructure, but then there would be an infrastructure section afterwards that can be referred.
but I think straight up, we ought to say what is really guiding us in that study
Right.
should be there somewhere at the top.
Okay.
Not in any great,
Right.
just the mention of it.
Typically,
more
in
than
a
that.
business, in a business plan, a vision statement is one paragraph.
Yeah.
Or
right.
2 sentences, or
Right.
Yeah.
3
Right.
sentences at the
Similar, and
most.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
You
We
gotta
aim to
distill
preserve
it, you
Waterville
gotta
Valley.
distill it into.
Right.
It shouldn't change.
No,
No.
that's right. It should guide everything else that you
Right.
write about
yes.
in the master
Well,
plan.
that's why I say you probably need a committee to look
Well,
at. So the vision statement is this, and it's based on these things.
Yeah, I think you need several subcommittees,
Right,
like
for each
this
chapter.
recreation chapter.
Right?
Do you want Brooke to write or do you want a couple of you to sit down with Brooke and folks at Curious George Cottage or the WVAIA or whatever it is? And then they come up with the recreation, right?
That makes
I mean,
sense. They're the ones that are executing it.
Well, and they're the ones that have all of the data,
Yeah.
because if you want data in here, Brooke's gonna be the one that has the data.
Yeah.
Or
And
AIA or whatever.
And the athletic club and, yeah.
That's right, exactly. So how do you want to break these chapters down, I think is a key point. And like Bill asked, do you want to do chapters 1 and 2 first? Or do you want to do all of this work in the back first? And then see what the
Well,
data is.
and
If your question is,
one of the real problems is there's a whole chapter missing because we couldn't get anybody last time to work on it.
on which one?
The economic development.
That's right.
It's gone. The most important thing in there, which is what are we gonna do to maintain the economic base of this town? We never addressed.
Yeah.
Never wrote a single word.
I agree.
Now, I think part of the problem is it looks like an overwhelming task, and I don't think it is an overwhelming task. I think it's a question of getting some people to sit there and just put a couple of bullet points down. These are the things we're gonna do.
And these are the reasons why.
Then you can get all the flowery language you want, but where we struggle is where direction. These are the things that the town ought to be focused on. And I think that's why, for instance, that the zoning change on the reducing the lot size got turned down, because people don't agree with where we going,
Yes. Yeah, we didn't market that very well.
No,
Well, it doesn't seem to make much sense to finalize any kind of configuration of the first chapter or this first and second chapter. I really would like to make it 2 chapters
Mhm.
until we get into some of the details. That's
Okay, and we accept Mark's suggestion.
Yeah.
That we try to do the nitty gritty, not a very good phrase, but let's say that we try to do more detailed work department by department
Mhm.
and get some data before we then summarize it all as a vision.
So
Or at
Bill,
least if we ought to go chapter by chapter and read them and find out, where are we right now?
Yes, so I did,
Right.
before I
I
fell asleep,
read them all.
tried to look through the whole document, but still looking for if this is a master plan that is supposed to tell us where the town should be. It says right in here, it should say what the town should be 10, 20 to 25 years from now.
Right.
you are required to have a master plan. It's got to tie into your capital improvements program.
That makes sense.
So, I mean, that's what the intent of the law is,
Yes,
that this is the guiding document
yes.
for what we do.
Well,
as a
and
community for
Likewise, the
years.
zoning. If we
And the
wanna go
zoning.
change
That's right.
zoning, it's
Exactly.
supposed to be based on conclusions of the master plan.
That's right. That's right.
But we did that work initially.
Totally without looking at the master plan.
Doesn't
Right.
seem.
I mean, you should be looking, when you're making a zoning change, you're supposed to go to the land use chapter of the
Right.
master plan,
Yes,
and you're supposed to say, well, this is why we want to make this change.
Right.
And
Otherwise, you
Other-
leave yourself open to spot zoning.
that's right.
You know?
Yeah. How about a subcommittee on each chapter? At least get those assignments down. And then somebody from that subcommittee, I'll let the department heads know that the subcommittee is gonna wanna sit down with you and start going through chapter by chapter with the staff. And Bill, if you and another person want to form a subcommittee for economic development, I'd be willing to sit down and do, like you said, a bulleted list of things to get that chapter started.
Okay.
Do you want to do that?
Yeah.
I would help with that.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, you can
Well,
have
I
up
think
to,
it's
you can have up
critical
to
that we
3.
talk about economic development.
That's right.
I mean,
Just start and, like you said, make some bullets and then start the
Right.
conversation.
we need to get some of the people people like Craig and the rest.
Yeah,
that have a vision
absolutely.
of what the world could be like.
Gonna
Yeah.
suggest that if I were part of that, I could tie in
The resort association needs to be part of that.
yes,
Absolutely.
agreed.
So,
Okay.
so no more than 3 people in each of the subcommittees, but if you could write down who's gonna do which subcommittees, that'll be, I'll
Economic
put you in.
Development, Bill Larson, Bill Spence, and Wendy.
Okay.
Now, the next one would be
All
land
right.
use.
Did you get that? Land use. And that's gonna also be working with staff in here for the specifics on numbers of units. And, we have a breakdown of commercial units, residential units, where they all are in town. We need to update that list. It's about 5 years old right now. So, but we can tweak that, and that can become
Yeah,
your
it-
document.
The fact that we've got a buyer that's proposing
That's
to
right.
buy a whole chunk of
Absolutely.
land
Absolutely.
is gonna really change.
Yes, Mhm.
Pressures and the rest,
absolutely.
you know?
But we can start putting the numbers to that. So who's gonna
Be
do
on the
that?
land use committee?
What are the other, could you,
What are the other?
yeah.
items?
what-
So
Question of timing.
recreation, land use, you got them,
Usually
Terry?
the easiest, 'cause you get them.
Housing,
Housing,
that's a lively one.
yeah. And that's an issue from the workers' standpoint, workforce housing.
Yeah.
That's a big piece that is not really addressed in here.
Yeah.
Transportation, so working with Jim Mayhew and roads and streets and,
Well, it really gets down to the whole bus system. again,
yeah, the
you
bus
know?
systems, yeah. That's a huge chapter. transportation.
Parking.
See, I'd volunteer for recreation, transportation, like the two things I know something about.
And then you have
How do we want to do this?
What other ones are there?
conservation and preservation.
Yeah.
That'll be working with the Conservation Commission and the Historical Society.
I would turn it over to them. I'd have the Conservation Commission wrestle with it. The problem with conservation is we're too small of a town to effectively even begin to deal with it. I mean, we don't have enough land that you can, and you sit in the White Mountain National Forest. So everything that you're dealing with is aimed at preserving the White Mountain National Forest more than your land.
Right. I think we gotta change the focus. I think you guys need to change the focus of that conservation preservation to have maybe 2 subsections and break it down like Bill just said, because you don't have any influence other than providing input into the 10-year master plan for the forest. You don't have any control of what goes on with that. But it's the 500 acres. What do you want to protect and
Right.
preserve?
Yeah.
And then really that comes down to wellhead protection areas that are on private land, water. And after that, there's not a lot of natural resources that you need to protect because 40,000 acres of it's already protected.
We got into a huge debate last time over wetlands. Right?
Exactly. I mean,
Hopefully that's resolved.
there's-
That
5/10 of an acre of real wetlands in
real
private
Right. That is
land, it's nothing.
spot that with
Yeah.
standing water. Well,
Exactly.
Okay, we have an economic development committee with 3. We have land use.
Nancy.
Okay, Nancy for land use. Anybody else on land use?
I'll do land use.
Okay.
What else we got? Run them down again?
Housing, transportation,
And Rob was
recreation,
Doing
conservation and preservation.
Conservation and preservation is the other one.
Is the last one?
Yes.
I'll do recreation.
Well, it's
Rob, I had
interesting
you.
if we're putting the, historical stuff and kind of the
The
proposal
preservation,
that we're putting up,
I'll jump on that.
me or you.
And I really think, John, you need to, as a conservation ex officio member, conservation would be a good chapter for you to participate in. Because you can be the liaison between the 2 groups.
So John,
So John, you're forced into it.
John,
Come on,
Rob,
John,
and
you can
I
do it,
on the
man.
Conservation.
It's
and
okay, we'll
preservation.
do
Hey, Rob,
it in
you're
your
on 3.
schedule, don't worry.
I got you on 3.
Yeah, maybe I'll back off,
We had transportation, recreation, and conservation.
And preservation.
yeah, I'll back off one of those.
Conservation.
Well, why don't we do this, because the Historical Society, we're representing that, and I'll do those 2, because I've got some knowledge and passion around.
So
All right,
recreation and
transportation.
transportation.
And recreation, yeah.
Okay.
He'll do recreation and transportation.
Recreation, transportation, but not conservation and preservation.
Right.
Yeah.
I can cover that.
Now, are we still, is that still gonna be one, conservation and preservation?
Their resource inventories is basically what those chapters are.
Okay, what's land use? What's that?
Land use is what's the zoning districts and
Yeah.
that sort of thing, and do we have them where we want them, and
It gets into, in fact, that's the one area where, if I remember correctly, there were tons of statistics.
Yeah.
Because it gets into inventory of housing stocks.
Yeah.
and-
Yeah, but you've got all that information.
we do have all that.
Housing doesn't have anybody interested in
It's a hard issue.
it.
Well, although I do remember that we are in compliance with the
We-
state's low-income housing rules.
Yeah.
Yes,
We actually have a fair
Yeah.
amount of low-income housing.
because of
By
the
the
small
state's
condos,
definition.
Basically,
by
that's-
the small
Didn't make any
condos,
sense.
Yeah.
Black
Yeah.
Bear,
Price
Eagle.
point.
price
Yeah,
point.
but it's price point, yeah.
You can live here for $60,000. You know what I mean? You can buy and own.
And
A lot of towns
actually,
like
We've got a
that, some-
problem in the fact that we've got a lot of older housing stock.
that's right.
And it's now 20 years older than when this was written.
Yep.
Right.
you know, and it's getting older all the time.
So
And,
do we have a bunch of statistics on it, the town?
yeah, I mean, we have the price point of every parcel and how it's changed over the years. So we can do that. I think it's gonna take some comparison with the region. Because I think you're gonna find that we have the most affordable housing in central New Hampshire.
If I go on
Here
that
in
committee, will you
Waterville
do all the
Valley.
work? If I go on that committee, will you do all the work?
No, no.
Well, I'm not going to.
Okay, well, we'll provide the information and you do the analysis. How's that?
I don't know why I'm doing this, but geez, oh, thanks, that's jumping into a hellhole.
Well, I think it's important though, because we're seeing some pressures and, you know, Sharon can bear it out that we have a lot of different people coming to the valley than when this master plan was written.
Yeah.
It is a very different clientele.
When we see, like when I see a lot of new, younger residents or, you know, families or individuals moving into town, they're moving into town primarily for work, to be closer to their work areas. A lot of those, some of those individuals are living at their locations. If they're working at the Black Bear, if they're working at, you know, the Valley Inn, they have coordinated an arrangement with their employer that provides a unit or a reduced rental of a unit in the building, and they're right there. It reduces, don't necessarily even need a car, you know, that commute. Their employees are right there on site. So it's convenient for the, you know, the business as well as the employees. But it used to be just a random one or two. You're seeing that more frequently throughout all the inns and lodges.
Okay, so housing is Bill Spence and me.
I beg your pardon?
Good luck with that, Bill. Good luck with that, Bill.
I'm a crunching numbers.
You're a good Democrat.
It is a data-driven society
Yeah.
now. We don't have data, we're in nowhere.
We'll get the data.
Okay. So each committee has at least two, except for transportation. This is Rob all along.
Well, you know,
Who's seated there?
Oh, yeah.
Mike,
Mike.
Mike,
Oh, yeah.
Mike would be
Mike.
perfect for transportation.
Mike, what else we need him for?
What about everything?
Mike is actually, he's going to the housing portion of that planning
Their conference is-
conference. So he's
Yeah. that'd be
attending
good.
that session. So I know you're all going to come back and report respectively on their sessions, but he is going to that one
Yeah,
in
he goes
particular.
to that one, that double session on legal.
And the legal one too, yes.
That's where he belongs, yeah.
Okay, so I'll read down through them here. We get economic development, that's Bill Larson, Bill Spence, and Wendy. Land use, Nancy and Rich. Housing, Terry, Bill Spence, and Mike. Transportation, Rob Wilson and Mike. Recreation, Rob Wilson, John, Nancy.
And Mike.
No, you got three already.
Yeah.
Conservation, preservation, Rich and John. Good.
You get them all? All right.
I think I don't have them in the same
Okay,
order,
that
but they
brings
have
the,
it.
for the next time, I don't think there's really much that we could do for the next time. I think it's gonna be the committee. We'll just have reports from the committees as what if they've got anything started. I would
Yeah, I think
suggest,
it's gonna take a couple
Yeah.
months or so to,
have a
do
meeting
some
or something, get
reviews.
together and Mark on it.
Yeah.
Put some of the information.
okay,
Get yourself a work schedule.
yep. Well, Nick's gonna learn a lot about our assessing
Yeah.
program, pulling out numbers for you. It's gonna be good.
Mhm.
A good learning.
Next
Yeah,
day about
what a
that.
break- yeah, what a way to break into it.
I'm ready for it.
He is. He's ready to go.
So, how and when? Well, I would suggest that you get together with your.
Give me a couple of days. Brooke is out of town for the rest of the week,
Okay.
so I won't talk to her until next week, but I'd like to let the department heads know that you're gonna be contacting them. And we'll make sure they're ready for you to call. But you can call them through town office. we'll get a hold of it.
For the time being, we won't do anything with chapter one, we'll just leave it.
Yeah.
I'll hold on to this and we don't want to get to that point where we do. Okay, new business. You want to get something we'll bring up? Meeting reports, town floor group.
Yeah, the town club group is meeting tomorrow at 11. Mark and Liz from the SE group, and eventually Tom will be able to join in, do a little field trip, walk the trail and the rain, and check out so they can physically see. And, you know, our biggest concern, I think, right now is timing with the dam project and how that's affecting, you know, pushing back what we'll be able to do with trail work. So part of our discussion is going to be what we can realistically expect to get done, you know, through the family of signs and that type of thing. But of course, we can't put signs up if we don't have trails done. So that'll be a big part of our discussion.
And something that came up yesterday at the selectmen's meeting is the easements. We, as part of the bond issuance, we had to review the easements around the pond, and bond council would not certify our bond because of the sale,
Pending.
the pending sale between the Waterville Company and Sununus.
Oh,
So it's okay. I mean, the project is still there, but we did not borrow the money to do the work. Now, we can front it from cash that we have on hand. So we'll be closing on that bond issue in January instead of July.
So what does that do for what?
Nothing. We can still go ahead, but just know that the easements
Yeah.
are going to be something we're talking to the Sununus about.
Are these new easements?
No,
that are
they're
required or
existing.
easements?
She's worried about,
If they'll make us move them.
that's right. And so before we commit to building an actual trail,
Yeah.
we gotta have a better wording of the easements is basically what she's looking for.
And that can't come until after the sale.
Until after the sale, that's right. That's why she
After they
wouldn't
get to it.
she wouldn't approve anything.
Yeah.
So, and that just happened yesterday, so.
Yeah, in the long term, it would be better, but everyone has to be patient for the short term.
Well, and that's what we talked about at the selectmen's meeting is we don't want to build something and then
Yeah,
have it change and,
Yeah.
you know, so we're just going to let the sale occur and then sit down with the Sununus and rework those easements.
Is there a sale date?
No, they're working on it right now. They're getting closer every day, but we don't have a firm closing date yet. I know, there was a 43 page, you gotta look at this, and this, but 40 pages of it.
Wow.
So, but they're getting through it. And it's still moving ahead. Just had a communication last Thursday from the Sununus that nothing is stopping them. They gotta clear up all these questions.
Terry, I'm sorry, Wendy, are you done with the town? Just on the new business, there was a reference made to bicycle versus skateboard park.
Yeah, Chris is checking on that, so I don't know, I don't have any further information.
Is it thought that the skateboard is becoming a bicycle venue or?
My understanding, and I haven't driven up there because of this meeting, but my understanding is there's construction equipment and they are building a bicycle park.
I went up there this morning, I saw a bunch of materials stockpiled there. They've
Okay.
seen the equipment.
Okay, good. We will find out what's going on, but it came across to us as they're building a bicycle,
Perhaps.
some sort of bicycle park or something. And I know that was a possibility in their plan to do it adjacent to the skateboard park and do something with mountain bikes, but it never went beyond, we're thinking about doing this.
The issue
They
is
didn't-
whether, I don't know what that property was zoned. But the issue we got into last time with the skateboard park and why it was never, it was a constant renewal
Right.
is, I don't think it was allowed by zoning, right?
No, it went on, it was a parking issue. It went,
Because
the-
it took
it-
parking spaces
yeah, it took
away.
21 parking spaces away. And again, I don't know where they're doing or proposing to do this bike park, but I don't know if it's in a parking lot where we would lose additional parking or, I mean,
The
this,
material stockpile right there in that adjacent parking lot.
yeah, so
Okay,
again, they
There's
didn't
been
do
no
any, it's been
contact
noted
with the
and
town.
so
on
Chris
what
is
their
working
plans
on it.
are. Okay,
I spoke with Tim Smith, and if you're standing in front of the skateboard park to the right.
Yeah.
It's gonna be, a small area, not a huge area, but they're putting in, for bicycles, what they call a berm park. So they got these little
Mhm.
berms that
Yeah.
kids can play on and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's where the location is gonna be right there.
That's
Yeah,
fine, except
but
you gotta go through site plan
It's
review.
not their
It's
land
not-
even.
And it's not even their land, so, and we don't have anything from the
Who makes
Waterville
the
company.
call on whether it's allowed by zoning?
Chris does.
Okay,
Yeah, I think they kind of jumped the gun that they might be testing.
Well,
well.
again, it's construction. It goes back to the,
They don't.
digging
they
the
have
whole
to do
thing.
anything. They-
And I-
If they got permission to use the property, they don't have to do anything beyond that.
So does Chris, is that his job? to
yeah,
speak
he's
He's enforcement.
looking into that now. Yeah. It's ultimately the selectman's responsibility to do it, but they do it through Chris. I don't, yeah. I guess I'd like just a sense of the planning board. Is it something you would want to see site plan review on? I know it's ultimately the selectman's decision, but what do you guys think?
I don't think I don't like the arrangement we had last time. Either it's approved or it's in an allowed use and it's on approved property,
Right.
or it's not an allowed use. But this, every year we went when the renewal of permit or something.
Well, it's not it's not
I don't know
legal
what
what we
in the world
were,
it was,
we weren't
but
doing
it
what,
was not-
anything legal.
Yeah.
did we change that? Didn't we?
Yeah, you
Well,
finalized
I
it,
think
you
they
allowed
gave
it.
up.
Yeah.
No, we,
No, we approved
We
it.
approved.
We approved it permanently.
Yeah, okay.
the
And then
skateboard.
The
they-
skateboard
They
park.
Those
decided to get
21.
rid of it.
That's correct. It's still there.
Oh, okay.
Skateboard park.
This is an adjacent,
This is adjacent to the skateboard park.
which may be on parking, well, our is
It
on
may be, I don't know.
parking.
Again, because we haven't been given a plan, I don't know.
Either way. I think-
Does it need site plan review?
Yeah.
Okay,
I'd say, yeah, we just had the
Well,
discussion.
hang on a minute now, because it's really, there's no structure going on. It's just dirt.
it is a change of use and it's
taking-
commercial.
And it's taking parking spaces.
It could potentially be taking parking spaces, we don't know. It could be in the old Fifth Fairway area.
Oh, sure.
So,
There are materials and equipment there.
that's right.
That's construction.
Well, exactly.
Right, well.
Like digging a hole. No.
Again,
Well, we allowed it in one.
so the sense
Are we
of the
looking
board
the other way
is
on
it will
one,
take
right?
site plan review. Okay,
If I were a builder in this town, I would immediately
Just
start
do it.
digging holes. Just do it. I wouldn't bother going for any approval of anything.
can we strike that from the video?
Yeah.
That is not the sense of the board, is it? We don't want them doing it,
That
do
was,
you?
I think, meant as a caustic comment.
Okay, thank you.
No, I think Bill's the chairman of the enforcement committee.
No, the selectmen are.
No, the
And
selectmen
problem
are.
is It's not easy to deal with.
Okay, thank you, Wendy. Conservation Commission?
They're still, the meeting actually Wednesday next week, so we'll have more info then, but they're still working on the NRI.
We've contacted the contractor who's gonna do the physical work of putting together the resource inventory and take probably, I think he said, a couple of months to get that info together, but they are working on it and they have someone under contract.
That's it. Communications, Sharon?
I did register everybody that had inquired about and wanted to attend that conference on June 1st. So everybody is set to go on that. So I think there's 4 members attending.
Motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All in favor? Aye.
Phil, do you
Thanks,
wanna,
Terry.
do you wanna just email me some good?
Sure.
Yeah. Just
I
check
just-
your calendar and let me know.
I'm gonna pause and leave it like that. And then it'll come.
You do the same.
For,
For economic development.
oh, I wasn't on the economic.
Oh, who's, oh,
Bill.
I'm sorry. You email me